We're on part three. Welcome to part three, guys. So today, so we spoke about the um misfit, the misfit to Maven to mogul journey. Um, we broke down how some of the exemplars, some of the influencers that people like Alex Hormozy and Andrew Wilkinson, who, excuse um, some of the people who have had the journey and certain attributes that directly feed and directly contribute into a spiral ascent. We also talked, I guess, reached back to the original session and pointed out some of the challenges that you have to deal with, some of which are dilemmas, like, you grow in your ability to leave them alone until the right times, and the sort of emotional and neurological conflict that that it represents. So now we have introduced, I think, briefly the September strategy concept. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Gogo Erekosima. I'm the founder of Idea Age Consulting, a consultancy where we focused on consulting firms, consultants, coaches, service professionals, and service practices, including medical practice, um, and help them turn their expertise, turn their stories, turn their advantages into intellectual property that can feed their marketing systems and their business as a whole. So we have the concept of September strategy, which is a leveraged and collection bundle, what have you, of plays, of systems that allows you as an individual to go from what we called um, brilliant but blocked, or brilliant but broke, and allow you to leverage your brilliance in the marketplace to unearth, surface a position, an idea, an attribute that the culture is looking for identification with, that the culture is looking for someone to articulate, and you dig that out and you represent that and you build monetizable businesses, platforms, and assets on the back of that. So that's the nutshell. But September strategy, I introduced some of the core games or challenge modules of September strategy. The core ones are the squad game, playing a game, playing a a set piece protocol where you're able to take your identity, your insight, or both, and turn that into an interactive collective that is able to move you forward, keep you protected um, while you play profit games, keep you comforted, and create a sounding board for you while you move towards innovation in product development and offer making and crafting, or in implementing the plan of your dreams. This all is contributed to by a system of gamified challenges, a system of gamified context setting and sense making that will allow you to really have fun with your progress, have fun with closing your solution gap, closing your transformation gap, closing your aspiration gap in a way that is sustainable, that fits you, that allows you to potentially enjoy pioneering profits. In the very first session, we talked about how you have to turn habits of failure aversion into failure alchemy, competence at turning setbacks into real assets that other people that leverage your story, your narrative to bring even greater audience, even greater attention. And in this day and age, in the era that we refer to as the idea age, you can always turn attention and audience into cash or into licensable intellectual property or into transferable business assets. So the point is, failure is not failure, setback is not setback. It can always be turned into epics, it can always be turned into learning, it can always be turned into monetizable channels. But now we're going to talk about September Strategy Year in the context of Miracle Year world building. Now, that sounds like a strange subject and topic. Some of my clients and coaching clients from about 2008 started getting exposed to my framework on wealth matrix systems. And that is the belief that you are already wealthy, you already have monetizable, transferable assets. One of the big blocks is that our culture, and our time, the era we're in, has sort of conditioned us to think individually, to think in terms of our own personal what assets, what we have, our own personal skills, what we can do, our own personal record or track record when trying to solve problems, including the problems of going from dreamer to dominator to deal maker. But there's no reason for you to restrict your assessment of what is available to you to just what you have. It entails thinking creatively about what you have access to, who's around you, who's your colleague from a past job, who's your past client, who do they have access to? Is there a way to set up a system where every time they refer somebody to you, they benefit more than usual, and the person they refer to benefits more than usual? Once you're able to break out of the walls of individual thinking, one, when it comes to what you have, what you're bringing to the table, and two, when it comes to creating offers or creating strategies to solve problems. Once you break out of that individualistic paradigm, you are going to be you're going to have just about any resource that you want, because you are connected to somebody who's connected to somebody, at the very least, who is able to have access to that resource or owns it outright. So what it becomes is you architecting value between relationships, architecting value along the lines of certain rules, certain resources that you have direct or indirect access to, and let's put it this way: architecting offers and proposals that can benefit mutually you and the person that you're proposing something to. This is a great game, and is the wealth matrix system game. Now, one of the things that the wealth matrix system also does is, when you come, the first time that I taught the wealth matrix system, it was to a gentleman who has now become a friend and has been a past client, an associate, and a colleague. He is also one of the more celebrated solo consultants and small business marketing advisors in the state of Colorado. He was in a strait. He was in a jam because he was caught in the kinds of dilemmas that we talked about in the previous sessions. When you get to a point in your company where you're starting to clash with executives, you can see the writing on the wall. You see that the end might be coming soon, and you didn't have a plan. You didn't really plan to be pushed out, but it looks like it's going to happen anyway. And you don't realize that a lot of the skills and a lot of the professional competencies you've built up in your past can be applied to other opportunity vehicles that are more in your control, that are potentially more lucrative, at least for you as an individual, and that give you the opportunity to grow as a person, grow as a business operator, grow as an advisor, and more. So that was the situation, and I took him through the wealth matrix, and I'll take you uh, just a brief overview so that you understand the key concepts. One, he that thinks he has and he that thinks he doesn't are the same person. If you think you have, you activate forces, internal and external, forces of generativity, forces of interactivity that will allow you to put resources together, including resources that you only have indirect access to. But once you believe that you have, you will start from where you have and you will begin to architect partnerships, offers, proposals that make it possible to gain access to resources that are not directly in your control. So, if you look at the infinite or nearly infinite matrix of us as connected humans, you begin to realize that just by tapping into your own bundle of spiritual, intellectual, relational assets, you gain beginner's leverage to turn the flywheel of our connected, to begin to turn the process where now you have something to go trade or go negotiate with somebody else who also has their own assets and who has some means of reaching somebody else who may have something else that you both need. So basically, you tap into a different dimension in the same world that you were living in just a few minutes ago. But now you have crossed over to where you can see that you're not actually as limited as you might have believed, and that there are many avenues to the same road that you are trying to get to. It does require first thinking about yourself in a different yourself and your immediate surround in a much different way from how you may have thought about yourself, and then learning how to think about other mindedness, thinking about other person first, sort of borrowing their lens and to think about their interests and the way that they may see a particular context and transaction, so that you can create a proposal, a partnership, or an offer that has a prayer of a chance of resonating with them. If you can do that, you are well on your way to having a skill that travels and transfers, a skill that has an opportunity to set you onto a spiral, virtual spiral mechanism of your choosing, whether that be an influencer platform, as in YouTube, LinkedIn, what have you, or whether that be a business, or whether that be a movement for change. That is up to you. So the wealth matrix system helps you audit yourself, audit your story, audit your what we call secret resume, your skill set, your past, and turn that into sprints, basically experimental journeys where you test your assets to see what might resonate. If you go to the check the first session, and you'll see that we talked about the difference between the constipated thought leader or storyteller, the catalytic storyteller or thought leader, and the cathartic storyteller. And each of these three potential leaders and influencers is operating in a separate paradigm. For the constipated thought leader, you believe, you feel like you have a message, like you had a message in the past, but somehow you don't even seem to know how to get started to get your message out there. You might be conflicted as to who you're going to talk to first. You've heard about the riches and the niches. You've been exposed to the impracticality of just having too generic a message, and why that doesn't make sense in an era of absolute content overload. So now you're stuck because you still think you have a message, but you don't know what happens next and how to go about it. We talked about the kinds of individual journeys and the um, arrangements you can make to have people to go with you on the road, which is one of the real challenges of entrepreneurial journeys, being and feeling alone. Um, the the book, one of the books that feeds significantly into how I think about the September strategy and the September year game is the book called The 12-Week Year. It's one of a few books that have significantly impacted my views about time and temporal orientation, entrepreneurial temporal orientation, and how that either empowers us or affects and sort of deters us from taking the next step and going up to the next level. The Years ago, I read a book by a Jewish rabbi that was called The Sabbath, and I was struck by his description of the the ancient Israelite religion, the monotheistic religion that developed, but a particular feature of their religion that had to do with building archetypes and repeating patterns and structures in time. And he referred to it as building cathedrals in time. He was comparing the Catholicism to the Judaic religion and saying that, look, this religion, unlike the religious tradition that built their monuments with the material, these guys being prohibited from certain material depictions and depictions of divinity, they had to make different choices. So they built structures in time, in calendar. They built calendar cathedrals. So he called it cathedrals in time. And I started to think, this was way back in the 90s. And I started to think, wow, what happens if you look at time and you step outside of time and you start having a more interactive relationship with time? That was the very earliest seed of what has become September strategy, because ultimately, I would like to encourage you as an entrepreneur, as an independent expert, to become much more fluid in how you co-create with the calendar, how you let time be both an energizing force and an empowering assistant. So, central to that is the topic of the miracle year. I'm reminded of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein had his miracle year, and the world didn't realize, the world of physicists and the world in which he was working and making discoveries and competing did not realize that he was experiencing his miracle year. His discoveries did not really detonate like with the impact that they were going to have until a few years after he had written his works. So he had this brilliant period. I believe it was 1911, but I think it was a period of up to 2 years where he wrote most of the seminal papers that would change everything in his field. And there's a really dramatic, there's a poetic quality to the fact that perhaps the most celebrated scientific mind of the last 1,000 years had zero responses when he released his magnum opus, when he published the work he thought was the work of his life. It turned out to be the work of the millennium, but at that time there were yawns. Nobody cared. Nobody saw it. Nobody bought it. It was very few people who even thought that there was something real here. If you've been struggling with the epidemic of invisibility in your coaching, consulting, creative practice, or even worse, you have been constipated and stuck in thinking through your direction, wondering about your next steps. I hope you'll take some comfort from the fact that this guy, who is now so many years after he's gone, is still mentioned every day by somebody somewhere, uh, that nobody cared when he first launched. So don't be afraid of launching. Don't be afraid of shipping. Don't be afraid of declaring. Don't be afraid of authoring. Don't be afraid of sharing, because what happens is you are going to get the flywheel started. And you have to sometimes encourage yourself when the people around you can't relate. They can't relate to this thing that you think is such a ground shaking insight. They, or sometimes they can't accept it. They can't accept it. And you're wondering, are you kidding me? Like, this is the biggest thing. How can you not see it? And they can't accept it. In the last session, I talked about how the people closest to you are, they're connected more to your survival than to your success. And it seems like it's going to take so much work to get them aligned around your success journey and not just your survival journey. If you feel that that's happening, you have to set up for yourself the infrastructure that allows you to keep going forward on the spiral journey towards your goal, towards who you're going to be, what you're going to have, and what you're going to accomplish in this life. The miracle year is such a loaded and magical concept to me that we are here right now. If you're not watching this live, it's 2025. We are literally 144 days away from the new year, and that I chose this date to start this series because this 144 number represents for me the number of weeks that represents a stretch or spiral year. The year, an extended miracle year. You don't mind that your year is longer than usual if that year is full of breakthroughs and impact. If your most impactful, most successful, most miraculous year ever is your longest year ever, you will not complain about that. And what September strategy is at its heart is about getting you to engineer or facilitate a spiral September year where you schedule success and you position yourself for the kinds of success that you cannot schedule to find you. And you do that by building a platform. And if you're really good at this, and if you really get the dream, and if you really get the concept that I'm trying to share with you, you don't just build a platform, you build platforms of platforms. What I refer to as matrices of matrices. You build circle. So you start with your first circle. What's your first circle? Your first circle is a group of people that you're so comfortable with them that you consider them a sanctuary of sorts. They are people that they're probably past clients. They are good friends in business and probably in life. They are people where they surround you and you tell them that they are there not for your survival, but for your success. And you give them the protocols, especially the protocols of invitation, the protocols of cooperation and collaboration. You invite them to take on an epic journey of their own so that they too can pursue, in the context of your circle, those powerful dreams that they might have been tempted to put aside. You are in a pact of mutual respect and you are in a pact of mutual empowerment. So if you have such a group and it's 7 to 10 or 12, and either you charge a minimal fee, you charge a lot, or you charge a little or nothing, what's important is that you go from your identity to the insights that you want to hook people around, You use that insight as a pretext for invitation using, a simple landing page tool will do, or a simple Google Drive, Google document with a link to wherever your infrastructure is. I will give you a lot of tools that are really good for setting this kind of world up. But from there, you now initiate interactions and conversations around your goal, around your sprint, around the challenge in which you have gamified your journey towards stratospheric success. That's what this is about. It's not really about sporadic success. It's about stratospheric success, well built, able to ride exponential forces when they hit you, when they come. Media platforms, positioning platforms, intellectual property platforms. And when you are able to do this, guess what? You're going to your calendar, you're learning how to launch, you're learning how to make craft offers, craft proposals, craft partnerships. You're putting it in the schedule and then reverse engineering the activities that you need to accomplish or that you need to invite, incite, instigate others to accomplish in partnership with you, one way or the other. And now you are playing a completely different game. Now you're exposing yourself to sources of leverage that are media driven, audience driven, intellectual capital driven, technology driven. The co-founder strategy, the non-technical co-founder strategy, where you come in with ideas and competencies that you've built from your sprints and your challenges, and you invite someone who's great with the code, you screen them out, and you partner with them on an effort that, yes, has the possibility to fail and fall on you, but also has the upside potential of blowing up and explosive success greater than you dared to imagine. This is a completely different game from going to work at Monday 9, coming back at 5, doing some overtime work, coming back again, go to bed, get up, come back, a commute, get there, come again, come back, pay your bills, go to bed. You are definitely made for more than that. You are in a time in human history that allows you to be more than that. You suspect that your life could be more than that. But the little tiny wall between you and all of that is your willingness to take on some challenges, whether you succeed or you have setbacks or you fail, and be willing to mold those challenges and experiences into a miracle year journey. What does miracle year world building entail? I have three components. One I refer to as world bending. The second I refer to as world birthing, and the third I refer to as world building. And these are generally correlated with the stages of entry into the September year game. You can start the September year game as soon as you want by starting a group sprint with you at the center, facilitating both yourself and a cohort, and encouraging everybody to target something, name the duration of their streak, and challenge them to a streak. Challenge them to communicate why they want to go on this streak, what they hope to gain. Challenge them to come back and document during the streak, and then challenge them when they come back to document the end and document the next level leverage, what they're going to do with this success or this stumble. If you can do that, you're in the game. And then when you're in the game, nothing can take you out of the game until you step out of the game. Think about it. I tested out something. I saw a special kind of offer hosted by Rich Sheffrin, one of the consultants and coaches online, and one of the premier online business coaches, probably the first one on the internet, the first big one. And he had he talked about, he had executed this mystery box offer strategy. And I tried it with a small group of my clients, but I messed up the timing. I bungled the interval and I got terrible results. Um, a year ago or two or three, I would not talk about that fail again. But the way I am now and having accepted the September strategy principles and mindset, I have every intention to revisit that debacle. I have every intention to record it, to record what I was hoping to do, to record how I should have done it if I wanted the best results, to record what I did instead and what I've learned from it. And to turn that into a mechanism for attracting others, for engaging my prospects and my community, for teaching, and generally just turning it into an intellectual property asset. You can do the same thing with every part of your life that you wish. I will say though, like going back to the miracle year building, world bending is a very unique exercise that I came up with to get you and your brain and your nervous system. Notice they're all you. But I have found out that your conscious mind might be different from what I call your brain, which is that part of you that is just taking in all the information, processing it, while also controlling your heartbeat, your cadences of breathing, your circadian rhythms, the flaps in the blood vessels, and 1,000 other things. That brain is really designed to keep you alive, to keep your vital signs functioning properly, and to maybe generate some pain and some alert signals if something is going wrong. It's not as much designed for you to learn mogul hacking or learn miracle year world building. So I differentiate between reprogramming your conscious mind, your intended learning, your intended activity, your intended acquisition from what I call your brain, which is the more unconscious part, the more behind the scenes part that has to be spoken to indirectly through through resonance, through emotional intensity, good or bad, through repetition, and through recognition of patterns. So that brain, I still differentiate again from your nervous system, the gut system of your emotions and how the pit of your stomach gets roiled when some things happen, and how you get excited when other things happen. And these three layers, I believe, have to be reconditioned to the new world that you want to build for yourself to operate in, to live in, to be, do, and have inside of. And so for me, world building goes into basically setting up a disciplined regimen of daydreaming the way that your world is fluid and flexible, meaning that you don't just wait for the new year to have your year. You have your year anytime you want. For example, you set up sprints that are like, for instance, don't be surprised if you stay in touch. If on September 1st, I send you a greeting that says Happy New Year. You have a year that is more than a 12-month period. You can choose any kind of year you feel like, any grouping of 12 or whatever. Like, you can bend the time that you use to meet goals according to what energizes and excites you. So, for instance, in my case, I discovered 12 or so years ago that when I did one of my coaching audits on myself, it was kind of difficult. I was biased, but I realized, oh, wait a minute. When I looked back at my life, I looked back at my resume, I looked at my secret resume, I looked at my history, my story. It was unmistakable, as clear as day. I had a 3-year transition pattern. And it was sort of disconnected from whether I liked what I was doing or whether things were going well at the company or at the job. There was a 3-year period. I mean, it was so strong, I was afraid that I was going to get divorced in 3 years if that thing kept up. So, having made that observation, I've now operationalized it for everybody else. I've operationalized it because Alex Hormozy has something that he says, and he is, if you're not familiar with him, is one of the biggest business influencers on the internet. But and a multi-time author of $100 million offers and $100 million leads. But Alex Hormozy had an idea that that is communicated. I've heard it communicated different ways, but this happens to rhyme with my timing. And it says most people greatly overestimate what they can accomplish in 3 months, and grossly underestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. I think that this is especially true in the era of generative AI, large language models, and Internet of Things, the connected internet, and modern biotechnology and just nanotechnology, quantum. We are in an exponential era, and you have to start to stretch your software to meet the external world's infrastructure and to leverage it for your benefit. So world bending involves thinking into stretching time, contracting it. And that brings us to the September year game. When I talked about the squad games, I forgot to tell you about the sprint games, or I forgot to reiterate the sprint games and what I refer to as the spiral games. Sprint games are just any bundle of challenges that you choose to partake in and that you want to execute, especially in a streak format, like 100 days making an offer, or 100 days attempting a direct sale, or 100 days eating, or staying away from certain kinds of foods. Or so these are all the sprint games. These are mini projects, these are mini personal projects, these are mini voyages, mini challenges. There is a way in which you can say to yourself, and this was the genius of the book, The 12-Week Year. Hey, if I really, really try to consider this next 12 weeks my year, I have to see if I can accomplish in this 12 weeks what I usually would accomplish in 12 months. There's so the two books that go at this most directly are the 12-Week Year and Time Collapsing, I believe, by Ed O'Keefe. And it's really about just shortening your usual tempo for results expectation tempo, and making it, following up with subsystems to make that truly a year-like period, your new year. This is my new spiral year because it's 144 days in this spiral year, which represents each of the next 12 days for me is going to represent a quarter. And so the equivalent of the next of 12 of those days is 12 quarters is basically 144 days. So that's my custom new year for my own purposes, for my goals, for my achievements. I want to encourage you to have your own new year. It can start on your birthday. It can start on any date that gives you energy. Um, so, and then build on that. Now, that gives you the concept of the expandable or fluid year. And practice that. Spend 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes in the evening, whenever it is that you're quiet and introspective and meditative, and think through how you break the get rich fast or opportunistic orientation or a shortcut orientation, if you know that the longer year you give yourself allows you to activate large payoffs. Why? Because foundations matter. Ooh, I need to write that down. Foundations matter. And the foundation, one of my long distance online mentors talks about this all the time, that with the right foundation, building a foundation for, say, $100,000 a year income or revenue is different from the kind of foundation that that results in an $8 million, $10 million revenue. So you have to pay attention to the orientation, to the temporal orientation that informs the foundation you build for your influence, for your career, for your change making nonprofit, or for your your influence. And so world bending is about thinking through, like dreaming through time contractions. I told my son a month ago, I told my son a story about a very unreasonable king from the past. His name was Philip II of Macedon. He's more famous for being the father of Alexander the Great. But Philip is someone I consider a seminal figure in Western history. I consider him to be the genius behind the accomplishments, the later accomplishments of Alexander, and the mastermind without whom Alexander would have just been Alexander the humble, or Alexander the regular. Philip of Macedon had a very big and unreasonable dream, and that was to conquer the greatest empire in the known world, in their known world, and that was the Persian Empire. It was very unreasonable as an ambition, but this was the ambition he nursed. And because his ambition was so large and so big, it resulted in a series of downstream innovations, reforms of the Macedonian army, the development of the sarissa, the Macedonian spear, the spear, and just different military formations. The reform, in essence, of Macedonian society as well. And this was so that he could unite all Greece by force, or by manipulation, or by deceit, by begging. He mixed all the strategies, and eventually he got his purposes to be realized. And he was probably planning for his own assault on Persia, but depending on which historical sources you believe, he was assassinated by Alexander's mother, Olympias, or not. But in any case, he died, and it was left to Alexander to lead the great mission. If you don't nurse and cultivate what I refer to as ancestral or large asymmetrical vision and ambitions, a lot of the strategies that might have occurred to you are not going to be available to you. So it's really, really, really useful for you to think through what are the dreams that you cast away in your, when you had setbacks, when you sabotaged yourself, or when you said yourself disappointed, and see if you can pick back up some of those ambitions, but go with this framework where, I can bend the time frame in which I operate. I can imagine myself doing something in 12 days that ordinarily should be aimed for in 12 months. How do I do it now that I've made this decision? And keep thinking that way. You'll become more generative. You'll become more innovative as a deal maker, as a wealth builder. Secondly, I want to go to world birthing. World birthing is those first moves that you make in which you articulate an idea that is very credible to the first hearers, maybe partly because it's related somehow to your identity and your backstory. And you use this idea as the key catalyst to create yourself, your own matrix, your own internal intellectual property world, and then externally to create your first relational matrix, your small group, your squad, that is going to be open to going on these kinds of small failed journeys together with you. This is the birthing part. And the way that I remember the steps to take is I refer to it as the identity to impact. And that is that you think about and document who you are, your backstory, your unique frames. And then from there, you invite, you isolate a big idea. We'll call this an insight because it's not just information. It's an idea that affects somebody. It's an idea that is directed at an identity. The easiest is the identity that looks and acts and has a history and a backstory like yours, but it doesn't have to be. In any case, you have an idea that affects an identity and creates impact or has an impact on them. That's an idea. That's an insight. And you want to use this insight, you want to change, you want to create a hook for this insight. For instance, uh, I have this concept of mogul hacking, and we're going to launch that mogul hacking to an audience that is familiar with Alex Hormozy and some of the luminaries that came out of the digital world and have now gone into the wider business world, particularly the worlds of micro equity and micro private equity, and large scale private equity and M&A. By doing that, I can find a group of people, less than 20, that are going to be willing to go on a search journey with me as part of my circle. That is world birthing. It's just one layer of world birthing. The highest layer of world birthing is to be able to see a vision of this world, or a vision of some of the large scale systems, political, economic, societal, legal, environmental systems, seeing those systems radically different from the way those systems exist now, and being able to call that from your intellect and your imagination into a workable framework that you can advocate for, facilitate, or enable in this world. The applications of this kind of birthing go from anywhere from being an influencer to being a maven with a how-to or a signature method, all the way to being a change maker who is sparking and facilitating a new kind of movement. Ralph Nader in the 70s absolutely revolutionized American life by putting the squeeze on the American big business, who were not being regulated in any way environmentally to where they needed to be, and other business sectors, and made it happen. Sparked movements and many movements. Today, in many cities, you have public interest research groups. Those were all sparked by the movement of one person. And there are many other stories like that. So that is birthing. And birthing sometimes requires you personally to be activated. That is to take audit and stock and assessment of your advantages, your individual advantages, and the advantages in close vicinity and proximity to you, and turn those into some kind of widget, some kind of momentum widget. I'll give you an example. Temple University in Philadelphia was largely funded by the activities of one man, Russell Conway, who gave one speech and told one story, Acres of Diamonds, and told it so many times, so many places, and used that leverage of his thought leadership to raise funds and eventually build what became, I believe, Temple Baptist University and eventually Temple University. So birthing is really important. And then we go to world building. And the world building that I'm talking about is not the world building of you, the average your fantasy authors or your novel writers. It borrows significant elements from them, but it is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is fifth dimension world building out here in the real world building for ambitious people who want to create a different legacy for the people who answer their last names going forward after they're gone. For people who have what I refer to as ancestor ambition or majestic ambition, who want to influence areas because they think that doing so will help them contribute to the world, to make the world a better place. Or people who want to make a name, who want to take down a great challenge, who want to build the biggest business they can. These people are going to start first with key infrastructure that is principles and ideas. When you accept this challenge to become the most impactful version of yourself, that's the challenge implied. That's the challenge implied in this world building. What you can do is what I refer to as um, miracle year world building. You choose the beginning of a year and you begin to execute in the direction of some mentor or some role model that you have selected. If there's not one mentor that really properly represents where you want to go, you can make a composite mentor out of like two or three of them. This person has built this kind of character and has this kinds of personal practices with themselves, with their families, with their friend network. This other person has has accumulated a portfolio of assets, or has built a certain level of business, or has a certain level of affluence. It's the be, do, have framework. You like what this person has become, who this person has become. You like what this person does and the way the person goes about doing it, because you want to do what they do that same way. And then, of course, have like what they're enjoying, the lifestyle that they're enjoying, and things like that. So, miracle year world building is really very deep. You set just like the late Covey, you set the big rocks in your schedule first. You figure out how to schedule your sprints, how to schedule your big events, your signature events, and then you wrap everything else around it. And then you reverse engineer the skills, the competencies, the timing that will need to be involved for that launch to happen as you have intended for it to happen. It also means building digital constellations, places that represent the principles and the people that you're attracting. And so creating ecosystems. I'm going to say something in the next video and in the next session, that will shock some people. But I believe that the next Silicon Valley is going to be virtual. There have been a bunch of cities, a bunch of governments, regional governments, sometimes national governments, who have put in significant resources to try to simulate or repeat the Silicon Valley dynamic. The vast majority have failed. In China, you have some agglomerations. You have some big collections of related companies from related industries in very, close proximity. But a lot of those happened more organically, not according to the planned programs. Planned programs of this scale tend to fail. Excuse me. Tend to fail. But the Silicon Valley that I intend to build, and hopefully you will join me, starting with the September Strategy Year Games and the sub programs where we can meet, like the small fails mastermind. I believe that the end of that journey is going to be you having built many systems of influence and income and impact, and really able to direct resources, because you have been practicing this and you have been mentoring others while looking at role models to apprentice yourself to. And if you can do that, then this whole idea of world building, taken out of the context of writing and out of the context of creative works, and turned creatively into your life, to your platform, and to your business, has significantly powerful potential. I hope. Hello, Karthik. How are you? Um, I hope that this concept will be, of world building your own miracle year, using the September strategy protocols, using the squad game, creating a circle around yourself, using the sprint game, choosing from a selection of strategies, and then applying it to a long game, the spiral game, which for our purposes is going to be the next 12 quarters, like a 12-quarter period. That's the standard September strategy year. And like I said, you're not going to care if your year is long if it's the most successful, impactful year that you've had, similar to Albert Einstein. So, this whole idea of a longer year, don't fight against it. Just understand that some of the biggest games that you play have to be played by setting up a longer game, because the foundations of games that go, exponential, have to be built differently. They have to be built differently from, the foundations for $100,000 or $100,000 business is completely different from the foundation of a business that can make it to $10 million. And so when I say that the long game is the shortcut, it really refers to the fact that you can build and then create leverage. You can attract leverage of media, leverage of audience platforms, and things like that. So I hope that you'll think through this and how to go from a circle builder to building communities to uh, building collectives and ecosystems across digital platforms, across sites, and actually becoming a certifier of others who are community and circle builders. That's the end game for the September Strategy Games. The September Strategy Challenge is going to start on September 9th. We really have gamified some of the mental elements and some of the interactional elements, working hard to tie it up. This is 10 years in the making. And for me, I hope that it will change the trajectory of your business and maybe change the trajectory of your life. So we're going to take a break now. And from there, I hope that when we come back, we can get a little bit into some of the operational protocols. If you've been following since the first session, which I'll try to leave that on demand and have people come through. But if you've been following since the first session, you'll realize something. Some of the concepts are interrelated. You've got the wealth matrix system that is about turning your hidden advantages into alchemizing them, transforming them into leverageable assets and properties. We've talked about changing your orientation to failure, from failure aversion to failure alchemy. We talked about becoming a different type of storyteller and hence a different type of thought leader. We broke down the differences between the three types of storytellers and the three types of thought leaders. And so, and then we moved on progressively into the misfit to mogul journey. We used some of the big mentors around, like Alex Hormozy, Andrew Wilkinson, who a lot of the entrepreneurial audience here on this platform are familiar with. And we use their journeys to illustrate some of the conflicts and some of the catalytic attributes of each of those phases of the journey, going from misfit to maker to master builder to maven to mogul. And then we talked, I introduced a little bit of the September strategy framework in terms of time, world bending, time bending, developing through repetition and regimen a more fluid relationship with time, where you use time as an empowerment mechanism, where you say, my new year starts today. My new year starts August 9th, and it's going to be a 144-day new year. And in this 144-day new year, I am going to attempt to accomplish as much as what I would have ordinarily accomplished in 12 months. You now have the power to do that, not just on the pure template of the 12-week year, but on my template of the September game year, which is which gives you permission, in which you give yourself permission to have a longer year than is customary, just like you have given yourself permission to have a shorter year. So this is not only a fluid year system, it's a fractal year system. I want you to be able to stretch and shrink your year according to your purpose. That is your first step in building your world. And I'm going to take the next few minutes to just pay homage to Julius Caesar. And you say, what does Julius Caesar have to do with my Maven business and me being an influencer, and how to develop a miracle, a miracle year or scheduled success year? Julius Caesar he exemplifies a lot of the concepts that we talked about today. Don't get me wrong. When I did my Caesar deep dive, it turns out that Julius Caesar might have been a genocider. Julius Caesar might have, when his Gaul campaigns, it was shady and suspect, but that was the Roman way. The Romans, that was the currency of ascent in Rome, was get you some influence so that you can commission a legion, and you go out there and you get some resources and you bring it back to the center. But why Julius Caesar is important at this juncture of our world building journey is he reimagined, he changed the calendar. The month of Quintilis became the month of July. He set up the 365 day year that still affects us today. He had enough imagination and enough audacity about his power to say, hey, I'm going to change the times. I'm going to change the markings of the dates. I want you to be like Caesar and have a fluid relationship with the calendar. Set up your own year and force your immediate world, the immediate vicinity around you, to respond to that year, to your private year. And do that by installing systems of launches, systems of offers and proposals and partnerships, and executing on them in sprints and combining them into long game virtuous spirals. You do that and you're going to affect the people around you. They will respond to your year, and your year is going to be more real than when you first started. And this is a spiraling, self-reinforcing matrix, a miracle year effect that you're building around yourself and around your business or businesses or your career or your nonprofit or whatever you have going for you. So I hope this has been impactful. I hope it's been helpful. I just wanted to communicate some of the elements of the September strategy, really September meta strategy, the September strategy games, the September strategy expedition, and hope you can find your situation and your solution somewhere in one of these frameworks that I have shared. All right. Until the next time, we're going to take another 15, and then we're going to resume the next session. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll let you know as the events come up and as the infrastructure is set up, so that you can be invited and invite others and move towards your miracle year world building. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us, those of you who have.